Welcome to Multifamily X podcast series, Masters of Multifamily Maintenance Conversations. Ready to engage in essential dialogues exploring the multifamily universe alongside top industry leaders? Join us as we explore fundamental conversations for the multifamily space. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily X podcasts, Masters of Maintenance. I'm Adrian Daniela, your host, and right here in the studio with me is my co-host, Joelis Barandica.
Hey, hi everyone. Again, just Joelis Barandica, founder of Latinas in Property Management. And Adrian, such a pleasure to be here with you today. And our guest, I can't wait to hear all about him.
Let's go ahead and say thank you to our sponsors, Kairos Water and Upwork, for making this broadcast possible. And with that being said, want to go to our guest, Brian Middleton. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Adrian. Appreciate connecting with you on LinkedIn and making this happen.
Brian, you're the Director of Maintenance Services for Morguard. Tell us a little bit about your current position, what your responsibilities are, and a little bit about Morguard, a little bit about your company. Is it third-party managed, owner managed, size of the company, things of that nature. Anything that you like to share.
Absolutely, yeah. So Morguard, we're fully integrated, so we own and manage everything. We do both multifamily and commercial. So we are in mixed use, multifamily, typical garden style, high-rise buildings. We're in 13 states across the U.S., so spanning from South Florida all the way up to Chicago, all the way over to California. So we really cover the entire U.S. It is a Canadian based company, but we do kind of separate operations. So we kind of operate independently in the U.S., but from a Canadian perspective, very large company up in Canada. So 18 billion in total real estate between both. I've been with Morguard for 10 years now. I started off as a maintenance technician. I've kind of worked my way up to director of maintenance service. Pretty exciting there. We have about 9,500 units across the states. And then we have 14 shopping centers. They're mostly grocery anchored shopping centers or big box retailers, Home Depot, strip malls. So that's kind of a little bit about Morguard.
Before getting into additional topics, Brian, I'm curious about your journey before property management, and then what made you transition to property management?
Yeah, so my journey kind of was very retail based, and then I joined the U.S. Army, and I was a combat medic there. I was medically discharged. I have a little bit of a heart condition, so unfortunately couldn't continue my service there. And when I got out, I was just doing some retail work. I kind of walked out my front door one day and walked up to the maintenance supervisor and said, hey, are you guys hiring? He said, yeah, we're looking for, a part-time groundskeeper. Do you have any experience? And I kind of just told him, hey, no, I don't. But you teach me something one time and I promise you that I'm going to, know it, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to work hard and do the best that I can. I kind of looked at it at first as it was just going to be a job. Very easy commute. It was right out my front door. Didn't even ask about rent discounts. I think at the time, they paid me $9.50 an hour. So, when you talk about what wages have sort of become for groundskeepers and entry level positions now, a far cry from what it was back then. And it was only part time, and I worked from 8 a.m. to 12 Monday through Friday. I was responsible just simply for picking up the grounds. They had an assistant maintenance supervisor role, and he was, let go for reasons that I didn't know about. But basically, the maintenance supervisor came up to me and was like, I'm going to need your help. And I said, whatever I can do. And they just started giving me full-time hours. He started to really train and develop me and show me the ropes, and kind of show me what this industry was all about. Started off with smaller work orders and just sort of worked my way up there. A lot of it was on me. I volunteered to be on call. I think I ended up taking call for about 4 months straight, simply because I was just trying to learn. And it was all about how can I get the most experience in the quickest way possible. And this being in the industry, you're going to get exposed to a lot of stuff when you're, getting emergency work orders and after hours calls and that kind of stuff. So I really cut my teeth in plumbing. It was a 44-year-old community, and we had piping. So that just means a lot of pipe bursts, a lot of after hours calls, a lot of dealing with floods and restoration. So that's kind of how I got into the business and just really fell in love with it. Really fell in love with the service aspect of it, taking care of residents, and really providing a service to them.
Wow, Brian, that's really impressive. And something that really caught my attention while you were telling us a little bit about your story is your mentorship journey. So you mentioned that you had someone that truly mentored you when you started. What did that do for you? How did that create a path for your career? And how does that mentorship that you had back then kind of play a role in how you mentor or how you lead your teams now?
So my first mentor was Steve Howard. Hi, Steve, if you're out there still. So he took me under his wing, and I think that this is kind of a gap in multifamily, and really why I wanted to do this podcast and kind of talk about it. I don't see that happen a lot, where you have maintenance supervisors that really want to share knowledge or take people under their wing or really take a chance on people. And that's how you're going to continue to develop the next generation of maintenance professionals, is you got to share the knowledge that you have. And so his guidance and his chance on me is kind of how I've approached maintenance throughout my entire career. When I started with Morguard, I was a maintenance tech and quickly moved up to maintenance supervisor. And everybody that I hired on actually had no experience. And I did it the way that he taught me. And I kind of followed that kind of same pathway of, I'm going to take a chance on somebody, not saying that I know everything. Nobody knows everything, right? And not saying that everything I do is sort of the right way, but I don't take a lot of shortcuts. I don't fall into some of those bad habits that I'm sure Adrian has seen in the past and things like that, right? So I tell people, take your time, fix stuff the right way. You don't want to go back and forth into a residence apartment home multiple times. It's embarrassing to me if I get a call back on something. That's what I instill in my maintenance professionals. It's embarrassing if you have to go back, like you were supposed to fix it the first time. Now you got to go back. So take the time to diagnose things correctly first. When I'm training somebody new, you can teach them that out of the gate. You don't get any bad habits. You don't get any previous things that, I know this shortcut here, or, hey, one of the ones that drives me crazy is when we talk about Freon and people just sort of going and just charging the system, right? Well, it's a closed system. So if you're needing to charge it, that means that there's a leak. So let's find where the leak is and let's fix the leak properly. Not like, let's just continue to put Freon into it every 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And I see Adrian laughing because that is a bad habit, I think, that forms over time in multifamily, in any industry that deals with refrigerant, not just multifamily. But that is how mentorship and Steve's mentorship more specifically really shaped how I approach training, developing, and mentoring people today.
It's interesting what you just said, pump the system with Freon. We got to add some Freon. So there's a lot of bad habits that, have been passed on to generations of maintenance technicians. And there's also misconceptions, right? So let's start with the bad training. It's very often that, I'm looking at service request and the resident actually says, my AC is not cooling, it needs Freon. So even the residents now are telling us that what exactly we need to do. And sure enough, we never question. Well, I won't say never, right? That's the wrong, because it's not the case really. But we don't question, we have technicians that don't question that. And the first thing they do, they pick up the jug and they pump the system up with Freon without even checking the basics, like a clean filter, a clean evaporator coil. Misconceptions, going into the misconception area right now, everybody thinks that hiring a certified technician, it's all you really need to solve all of your maintenance problems and issues, and that's far from being the case. Being certified, the EPA certification, as we all know, it's a test that, you could, read like a 30, 50-page booklet and just take a test, pass the test. But that doesn't give you any type of, actual knowledge, troubleshooting knowledge in HVAC. For some reason, it's a misconception. Everybody thinks that, if someone has that EPA card, the certification, they're actually qualified, like they're actually having the knowledge to work on HVAC. So with that being said, Brian, that was a kind of long, rant out here, but I couldn't help myself. With that being said, what other big misconceptions you see in our industry in apartment maintenance? What are some things that you've been doing as from your position to influence to change the perception of others from outside looking in of the work that we do as maintenance?
EPA, I agree with you 1,000%. I think that people put that down, and unfortunately, I think that property managers, community managers, look at that and they assume, okay, this is a certified person just because they have their EPA 608. Well, to your point, Adrian, I got that when I was a part-time groundskeeper, and I got my universal certification. I never touched an air conditioning system before I got it. And I scored 100 on the type A, 100 on the type B, and an 87 on this third one. And I got a universal certification right out of the gate. I knew nothing about air conditioning, like literally nothing. So unfortunately, there's a big misconception that means that they know how to work on and diagnose the system. It just simply isn't the case. All that means is that you know how to handle refrigerant, and that you're going to do so safely, and that you're not going to leak it out into the environment, right? Which is a very important certification to have. I don't want to diminish the need for it, but it does not mean that you know how to change a compressor, or you know how to work on an evaporator coil, or even simpler things like replace a capacitor, or even diagnose anything that is wrong with the system, because it does not teach you anything like that. That's misconception number one. I think misconception number two also does, and it really, I think, depends on your instructor on your CAMT, because I've been through CAMT myself, and it was very fast paced, and we did not get a lot of hands-on training during the CAMT. It was more the book side of it. So I think that is also a gap that we have, that I think as an industry we should probably do a little bit better on, getting some more hands-on training in some of these programs, because we're looking at certifications, we're assuming that people know things, and we're sort of just throwing them to the wolves, so to speak. What happens on the flip side of that, and this is just natural for anybody, right? It's very difficult for you as an individual to go to your boss, to go to your manager and say, I don't know. For whatever reason, no matter how many times the leaders, the yous, the me's, the Jolises of the world say, tell us if you don't know how to do something, there's still this misconception that they're going to either get in trouble, or they're going to lose their job, or they're going to, whatever the case is, because that's probably been ingrained in them from years and years of what I would like to consider probably bad leadership. It's never bad to say you don't know something. I say that I don't know something probably every single day to my boss. And I've gotten to where I'm at. You probably have said it thousands of times in your career, Adrian. Nobody knows everything. Collectively, we can get pretty darn close. And that's why we build support systems. That's why we have regional maintenance directors. That's why we have directors of maintenance. That's why we have training opportunities and all the people around us, so that we can reach out to them and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I'm not comfortable with this. And then we, in turn, need to do a better job of saying, okay, how can I help you? How can I show you how to do it? What can I do to make you comfortable with this repair? And sometimes it's a confidence thing for them. Sometimes maybe they've only brazed a couple of times. Maybe they come from a property where you don't have washer dryers provided, and so they don't work on them. It doesn't mean that they're not capable. It just means that they just haven't had the repetition, and practice makes perfect. Like with anything, Magic Johnson or Larry Bird didn't become the greatest players in the world because, they just walked onto the court one day and just started playing basketball. They practiced for hours and hours and hours. Maintenance professionals are no different. So if we can create environments for them to really practice and hone their skills, that's how we do that.
Ryan, you said so many takeaways in everything that you just explained, and I'm in training and development, so I am all about accreditations and working with our organizations like the National Apartment Associations, like your local affiliate, on empowering our maintenance associates to really seek that leadership that is so needed out there. Can you give me some advice on, or can you give the maintenance personnel on these call on listening to us today? What can we do to want to encourage maintenance personnel to get more involved in the industry, to get more involved with your local affiliates at the national level? I also love that you said for the CMT, you wish it would be a little bit more hands on. Those are all really important topics that you mentioned. Have you reached out to NAA and maybe proposed something like this? How do you get involved and how can we make a difference?
I'll start with the easier question there. NAA and apartment associations, it's actually a goal of mine to get more involved in. And, I'm hoping that maybe the takeaway from this is I can get a little more connected with Adrian here and maybe, use him to get my foot in the door there. It's certainly a goal of mine to be more involved because I do want to make a change, and I do see this as a big issue within the industry in terms of the learning and the development of maintenance professionals and everything like that. The starting point, I think, needs to be that we need to do a better job of showing that this is a really rewarding career. You do not need a ton of education to enter this career path. Like I said, I walked in with no education, and within 15 years, I'm a director of maintenance, and there's obviously a lot of hard work on my part that has got me there, but there's also the willingness to learn, and I've just always pushed myself to continue to learn and continue to learn. You mentioned from a leadership and from a training and development standpoint, this is not just a takeaway of multifamily. This is a takeaway probably of any organization in the world. We don't provide leadership training to people. We do not train soft skills. Like nowhere in the world, very, very minimal people focus on soft skills, right? So what ends up happening? You take a community manager that was really good at maybe accounting or really good at getting a lease, and then you promote them into a position where they manage people. And that is a skill set that needs to be developed and that needs to be trained. The same thing for maintenance supervisors. So you take a maintenance supervisor that shows up on time, works really hard, does a lot of really good work orders and does a great job. And you say, okay, now we're going to make you a maintenance supervisor. Well, now he's in charge of leading a department. He's in charge of leading people. He's in charge of developing people. And you don't train him on the skills of leadership at all. Like, no, to my knowledge, not many people are doing that. We are trying to do better at that ourselves, to where we are giving leadership training to our maintenance professionals. But it is a skill, and it's a skill that constantly needs to be honed. But it goes further than just the leadership skills. We also don't train customer service skills very good in this industry. And maintenance professionals are the face of any organization, whether or not people want to admit that or not. I can promise you that Adrian and myself in our career have probably interacted with more residents than any manager, any leasing agent, any office professional, because we are going into their home all of the time. Providing customer service training to them is something that really needs to be at the forefront. What can NAA, what can CFA, what can local apartment associations do better? Incorporate that for maintenance professionals, incorporate that into CAMT, but also incorporate that into regular classes that can be offered. We always have an HVAC class available. We always have like a CPO class available. Well, why don't we have a leadership class available? Or why don't we have, how to interact with residents available for maintenance guys? And I think if we push that, I think you get better service to the maintenance professionals that are there, right? They're going to be led better by that maintenance supervisor. You also get better interactions with your residents, and that's just going to increase your retention. That's going to have a major impact on the community itself.
I love, Brian, that you took things, very high level, and, you spoke at length about leadership. I want to go very basic now. The typical way in which someone gets promoted from a service technician to a service manager is that something happened with the service manager. They moved on. They're just not around anymore. the most effective ticket runner, I should say, the person that solves most technical problems the quickest, they're the next in line to be promoted. And the way it goes is typically like this: congratulations, we think you're doing an amazing job. Here's the keys. Figure out how to manage a $80 million asset or a $100 million asset. Like, this is a very common way in which we do things. And there's no formal training for service managers to teach them how to become managers, right? I'm not even going the high level that you just described of leadership, but how to manage teams, how to manage a budget, how to manage an $80 million asset, how to manage inventory, your staff, how to manage your vendors, how to manage. So what's your take on that? What can we do better in the industry? And, maybe if you have some personal examples that from your career, from your past or present, that you wanted to share about, how things are done or have been done in your experience, share them with the audience. I think that'll be very valuable.
The number one thing that I see where people make a misstep on this is that, and it's not just maintenance supervisors, it's every role in every organization. People are scared to share information, or they're scared to train the next person up because they're scared that, if I show Adrian how to do this, Adrian's going to take my job. You cannot think about that. And I think that a lot of where I get that from is probably my time in the military. So the military is very, very similar to sports. You hear this with the New England Patriots, right? Next man up. You hear these mantras or these cliches. And they're not cliches. They're literally there for a reason. Okay. So it's always good to be training the next person on certain aspects. When I was a maintenance supervisor for Morguard, I was involved in the review process, even though technically they don't report to me. Our reporting structure is that they report to the community manager. But when that community manager hired me, I said, listen, I want to be involved in developing them. I want to be involved in leading them as a team and giving them their reviews and, all that kind of stuff. And I think that maybe comes from my retail management background. So I was a little more accustomed to doing it. What I would do is I would give them certain smaller things to manage to, right? So for the guy that took my place, once I got promoted to an operations manager, as a development tool on his review, I told him, okay, I'm going to give you the make ready board to manage to for the year. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off. I'm going to show you how to do it. So I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to guide you through it. Then you're going to show me what I just did for you, right? So it's kind of a train the trainer philosophy. And then for the final 6 months, you're going to run the make ready board. You're going to schedule all the vendors. You're going to do all of those different things. So that when he finally made that transition to taking the next step, he knew how to do that. And if you're able to manage the make ready board, that sets you up for being able to manage the other things that you're to. Managing a process, doesn't matter what the process is, the same philosophies go into it, right? So it's okay, you have to manage the ordering, right? Very similar, right? You want to plan, you want to look at it, you want to come up with it, you don't want to wait till the last minute. All the same principles apply for the make ready board. It's just a different process, right? So if you're able to give them small things to manage to, lighting audits, that's one that I really like to give as an example to my regional maintenance directors. I say, hey, give the maintenance technicians light management as part of their goals for the next upcoming year. Tell them that you want them to manage the lighting on the site. You want them to come up with a monthly inspection that they perform. And then that gives them some responsibility. So then now they have to manage to a program. They're responsible for the success of the program, and they learn how to do that. That also gives them some more ownership, gives them some more buy-in. It incentivizes them, gives them a little more purpose, gives them a little bit of growth. It also gives you the ability to say, can they manage to this small program? Because if they can't manage to a small program, then you know that you're going to have to really work with them if you're trying to get them to then, to your point, go up to managing an $80 million asset. If somebody can't manage to performing a monthly light inspection, they're probably not going to be able to manage to 4 or 5 maintenance technicians, 44 turns and, any given number of work orders that are open. So I think that parsing out small tasks and letting your team really manage them and guide them through it and mentor them through the process, really has helped me kind of develop technicians to be ready to take the next step.
And now a word from Sean Landsberg, co-founder, AppWork.
Most PropTech companies are built this way. We're hiring people that could write code. We're hiring people that are selling the product, but the end user is nowhere in this picture. How's AppWork different than the scenario I just described?
Well, we're fundamentally different because we are the end users ourselves. We, meaning myself, I am an end user of the product. I use the product myself on a daily basis. But something that we're a little bit different than I always like to look at us as we're almost like a community of people, us, AppWork, and all of our clients, where we leverage everybody's feedback, collective feedback, to help make AppWork the incredible product that it already is, and to help continue improving it. So we're constantly innovating, and we're all of our innovation, all of our pipeline really comes from the feedback and the ideas that our clients are giving us.
Brian, you said so many amazing things. I'm really taken back. One thing I do want to hear all about, because I feel like you're all about leadership and about promoting our maintenance to really elevate themselves. And that really sings to my heart. I think that's something that is really important to me. Can you walk me through is that the Morguard Maintenance Academy? Am I saying it correct?
Yep.
I want to hear all about this. How can I enroll? What is it all about?
Post-pandemic, and, I see Adrian talks about this a lot, is that, we are struggling to find maintenance professionals. That is not just a Morguard problem, that is an industry problem. So when I took over the role in 2021, I said to myself, how can I help? How can I help Morguard? How can I help the industry fix this hole? To the point that I spoke to earlier, me hiring inexperienced people. This is a practice that I've always done. So this is something that I'm used to. I always trained them to the academy. It just wasn't written down on paper. So I just needed to how do I get to what I used to do in the field? How do I get that on paper that can then be rolled out across 13 states and get 34 community managers to buy into it and really change organizationally how we think about training and developing people? I set off on this journey to create this program. We call it the Morguard Maintenance Academy. It started off as a 100-day training program, has a lot of different monikers, but at the end of the day, the goal is to take somebody like an Adrian with zero experience, like the groundskeeper like myself that just walks out of their apartment and says, how do I get a job here? And turn them into a semi-skilled maintenance professional within, give or take, 100 days. So it's a 12-week program. The first block of it, you really cover what the industry is about, what you're going to be doing, basic curb appeal, and then you build onto it. The bulk of the program is the next phase, make readies. This is where you're going to learn the majority of your skills. You're going to spend 8 full weeks inside of vacant apartments, practicing and performing various different tasks until you are kind of signed off by your mentor that you're able to perform that task. And how we judge that is that when you are able to perform that task independently, as if you were training it to your mentor, that is what we consider you are now a master of that task, right? So you're able, because we feel that if you're able to take somebody like myself or Adrian and sort of walk us through and teach us how to change a light switch, for example, now we are 100% confident that you can walk into that resident's home with full confidence that you're going to do the job right, you're going to do it safely, and that you're going to make sure that that resident's taken care of. The final phase of the program is your sort of final 4 weeks of it, is when we introduce you to work orders. And the entire time that you're performing work orders, you're performing them with a mentor so that you learn the skill of how to interact with residents, because I'm a firm believer that that is an acquired skill. That is not something that somebody's going to walk off the street and just know how to interact with a resident, know how to speak to them, know what to say to them, and know how to really explain repairs. Because as Adrian can probably attest to, sometimes you have to explain to residents what you're doing, because you'll all get that resident that asks questions. And guess what? They have every right to ask questions. It's their home. Regardless of whether we own it and they're leasing it or whatever, we want them to feel like it is their home. So they have every right to ask us, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And why is this broken? And I think that is missed by a lot of maintenance technicians. Sometimes they get frustrated when they're asked questions, but I encourage them to think empathetically about the fact that this is their home. If somebody went into your grandmother's house, you would probably want them to be doing the best job possible, right? So go do the best job possible for the resident, because that's somebody's grandmother, that's somebody's sister, mother, whatever person that you want to apply that to. I try to give that advice to our maintenance professionals. So once they graduate through the program, then they will be able to get their EPA 608, Adrian. So we'll put them through that toward the end of the program. And they will come out of the program being able to perform a make ready and being able to do probably 75 to 80% of what you would get from a work order perspective. They won't be able to fully replace a compressor. They won't be able to, do a full unit change out, but that comes with the next step of the development, right? We don't just stop and say, all right, you're done with the program and now we're going to walk away, right? It's continuous development. Now at that point, we know they can do all of this. They can help manage to the work orders, to the make readies, to those sort of things. Now we can start to develop them from a more advanced level.
There's a few questions that come to mind. I'm very interested in data points. How long you been running the program for?
So we have been running it for about 15 months.
15 months?
Yep.
How many people you had through the program so far?
We've had 7. And that's across multiple different states. I do put that as a caveat because it's, as you know, Adrian, it's pretty challenging when you're trying to train across multiple different states. I think if you have a single state or a cluster of properties, it is certainly a lot easier to train individuals. So the biggest challenge that we've had is how do you train this across multiple different states, right? Because how we had to go about it was we had to train our area service managers, think regional maintenance director. So we had to train them on how to train this to the team. And I say to the team because the way that we approach this program is this does not fall on one individual at the site. If you bring a maintenance academy professional through your community, everybody is responsible for training that individual. And we parse that out based on the expertise. If the maintenance professional, the tech one or the lead maintenance technician is the expert in turns, we want that person to be teaching the bulk of the turns, right? But if somebody else on the staff is the expert in the appliances, we want that academy student to learn from that expert in appliances. That way, A, training is more efficient. B, it's not falling on one individual. Being out in the field, and I think that this is where a lot of people sort of throw training in the trash, which is an unfortunate thing. But I think what ends up happening is that individual, that lead, that maintenance supervisor, it's so overwhelmed with trying to run the property, then he needs to then take the time to train the person, which takes a lot of time to do if you do it properly. So not having it fall on one individual, we found to be very, very successful. It also engages and gives the rest of the team purpose, right? It's you're teaching them training, you're teaching them mentorship, you're teaching them skills that they can take with them for the rest of their life, which allows them to develop as well. So it's not only are you developing the new person, but you're also developing your existing staff by helping them get better, by teaching them to share knowledge, by teaching them that, hey, training and development is important for everybody, and all of us are going to constantly learn.
So again, where can I sign up?
Sign up at morguardus.com.
I'm gonna have to do that.
We have positions on there, and we use it as a recruiting tool, and to get fresh candidates through us. But what it has also allowed us to do, and the other unique part that I shared with you all, is we have the 12-week version. We also have the 4-week version. And the 4-week version is for experienced technicians that are coming in from other companies, that you will go through a scaled down version of this. Most management companies, everybody does things slightly differently than the next person, right? So this allows an experienced technician to come in to learn our culture, to learn how we do things, to really learn how we approach preventative maintenance differently than other people do, to learn what we expect from a make-ready perspective, and to learn how we service our residents, because we do put customer service at the forefront. We call it plus one service at Morguard, and that's what we expect people to do. But I can't expect you to do it if I don't show you how to do it. So we've actually been able to take that 12-week program, scale it back to 4 weeks, and have experienced technicians that are coming in from the Lincolns or the Gray Stars or somewhere else that have experience in the field, put them through that 4-week program, 1 week on curb appeal and preventative maintenance, 1 week on our culture, 1 week on how we do make readies, and 1 week on how we approach our residents and our customer service. And then you're ready to go. That also gets them comfortability with the community, comfortability with where things are, the shut off valves, the breaker panels. It really helps them learn the community before you sort of just throw them in and say, okay, you're on call. I think we've all been in that situation, Adrian, where day 3 and then you're throwing a technician on call and all you're doing is setting that person up for failure. You're going to overwhelm them and they're going to potentially fail. And then they might get so overwhelmed that they say, you know what, I quit. That's obviously the worst case scenario, but it does happen. I think it happens almost every day.
What would your advice be to a young person trying to just enter the business, enter the industry? What would be your word of advice?
Come in with an open mind and be willing and ready to learn. This is not an industry that you can just sort of walk off the street and know. You're always learning. I'm still learning 15 years in. I'm sure Adrian's still learning. To this day, we're always learning and we're learning from each other. So that would be the number one thing. Whether you're coming through the Maintenance Academy or you're going to work for another organization, I think if you approach it with an open mindset and willing to learn, you're going to be successful in this industry. And it's a very rewarding career. I touched on it a little bit earlier. There's not many careers where you can come, out of the gate with limited experience, make a pretty decent wage. Most of us are paying a good living wage at this point for entry level positions, and then sort of learn on the job. And you will be rewarded with increases and raises, and there's bonus potential, and there's all sorts of things that doors are open for you as long as you're willing to learn and work hard and apply yourself.
So Brian, you mentioned that training the newcomers, like the students of this program, is not just one person's responsibility. So I want to stay on that a little bit and just kind of ask you to walk us through, like, how does that work? Is it just like their coworkers, the other technicians, and the service manager at the site they're responsible to train them? Is it anyone from outside that's coming in and training them? Is it them going to maybe a sister property and get like specialized training? Let's say that you have an amazing appliance technician right down the street. If you have a right down the street property, a sister property, and then how much is it book knowledge or like class knowledge of the entire program, and what percentage you would say is hands-on of the entire program, to just kind of give me an idea?
Yeah, so it's all of the above. So for in terms of who's doing the training. So who does the training? It's led by our area service managers, so regional maintenance director. So they are responsible for that academy student and their success in the program. So they're the ones that are out there every day. They support our maintenance professionals. They know our maintenance professionals. So they really know where the experts fly. They really know who should be doing what pieces of the training. So they're the ones that really help out. They're also, in certain situations, the ones that literally dive in and will do some of the training with them, right? So the HVAC portions of it, the appliances, some of the stuff that I think is really specialized in terms of, not everybody knows that on site or really knows it, right? I think people have general knowledge of it, but the ones that really know it have kind of like advanced their career up probably and are not on site anymore, right? So that's that. In situations where, like in my South Florida portfolio, I have 7 properties that are kind of right within an hour of each other. So there we can share the load, right? There we can have somebody go to a sister property if somebody is an expert. But in Colorado, I have 2 communities that are an hour and a half apart. Not always feasible. So my next step and my next goal is that I'm working with a company called Interplay, which I believe has been referenced on your podcast previously, Adrian. And I think that this is a fantastic training solution that every company should be investing in this. And so I have a demo with them, and my goal is to get them on board and to really supplement that training solution with my maintenance academy. And I think that that will take what is a great program and turn it into an excellent, almost near perfect program for maintenance professionals. In terms of how much is hands-on, how much is book, probably 20% book, 80% hands-on. We partner with Grace Hill Learning Management System, so we will supplement some of the hands-on training with classes that sort of reinforce that training from a knowledge and book perspective, Adrian. But for the most part, 80% of this is them learning hands-on in the field. We give them a field manual at the start of their program. This is something that I also picked up from the military myself. You get a field manual when you go through basic training. Gives you the basics on compass and direction and all the different stuff. And I still have my field manual to this day, some 20 or 14, 15 years later. You have it. I think it's valuable. This is something that they can take with them. They're going to be able to keep it. We don't take it back from them or anything like that. So when they're in an apartment, say they get stuck on an electrical outlet, how do I replace this, or what wire goes where? They could, in theory, take that field manual, grab it, quickly flip to the page, reference it, and then get themselves unstuck. So, but I think that using that field manual along with, if we can get this interplay added to it, interplay would also allow them to look at a video on their cell phone and really quickly reference that video. That's kind of the methodology and the learning of it. But from my perspective, it's very important it be as hands-on as possible, because that's, in my opinion, how you learn in this industry.
That's great, Brian. And I've used Interplay, so it is a great system. I think it'll definitely give you a leverage. And I'm so thrilled to hear more about your program. I do want to switch it up a little bit and just ask you a personal question. When you lose your focus or you feel overwhelmed, how do you get back on track?
I stay pretty calm, cool, and collected for the most part. I don't know if this is a good answer or a bad answer, but I always kind of just realize that whatever that problem is, whatever I'm feeling overwhelmed with, it's not the worst thing that will have happened to me in my lifetime. And it's not the worst thing that happens to other people, if that makes sense. So that really helps me put things into perspective and really stay centered on that. Everybody goes through challenges and in their life. And, I saw a graph the other day on LinkedIn, and it was a big circle and it was all filled in. And then there was a small dot in the middle of it. And it was like the small dot represents what you know about what's going on in somebody's life, which I think is very telling. And I think that far too often people jump to conclusions about somebody, but you really don't know a lot about what they're going through in their personal life or outside of work. And I think that as a leader, my senior vice president said this to me when we were going up to Orlando. As a leader, your job is to try to get the best out of individuals when they're going through the worst moments of their life. So whether that's divorce, financial challenges, or whatever, get the best out of them that you can. Doesn't mean give up. And I think that too many people sort of just give up on individuals, and they sort of just say, you know what, they're not performing for this 2-week period of time to write them up, time to go down this road. And it's like, no, they ask them questions, ask them if, what's going on, get to know if there's a challenge. So for me, I look at a problem like, hey, that flood that happened that took out 6 apartments, it's like my 80th flood of my career. It's just another flood for me. So I know that that's kind of like a bad answer in a way, because then it makes it seem like you're not taking the problem seriously. I take the problem very seriously. It's just I don't get overwhelmed by it because it's something that I do every day.
I don't think that's a bad answer at all. I think it's just you have a different approach, right? You just don't take that problem on. You try to find solutions and make the best of it. So, what can I say? Hands down, truly impressed by you.
There's a lot of chatter, a lot of conversations about centralizations in multifamily maintenance. Is centralization in maintenance a real thing, a real possibility, or is just a buzzword? Or is like somewhere in between the two?
I think it's somewhere in between. I think that if you have a portfolio that is very spread out, it's going to be very challenging to centralize things. I think that if you have a condensed portfolio, you can sort of look at certain things and say, okay, can I figure out a way to approach HVAC repairs differently? Can I figure out a way to, really sort of combine efforts and combine labor and that kind of stuff? But so I think it really depends on your portfolio and how it is laid out. I do think that there is some stuff. I saw that question on here. Happy Co is a company that I've kind of been speaking with, and they have this great software called Happy Force, which I'm going down the road of really exploring if that could be a benefit to us. But what that does is it provides virtual maintenance technicians for on-call. So this is a potential on-call solution that you could centralize that would really reduce the number of calls that go to your on-site technicians, because basically how it works is you go through a call service. Adrian would pick up the phone, would be able to FaceTime with Jolise and diagnose the issue. As you know, Adrian, a lot of on-calls can be probably fixed relatively simply. So if you're able to walk Jolise through, oh, it's just simply switching on the breaker, or either the breaker tripped, or the GFCI needs to be reset, or very simple repairs. I think that's definitely something that people could definitely explore. But I think that we're a long way away from centralizing a lot of maintenance tasks.
I definitely need to hear more about that on-call centralization. So we'll be in touch, Brian, apart from this. Now,
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about labor shortages in our field. How do we overcome them? What's going on with that?
I think being willing to take chances on people and provide them with opportunities is the first thing. I wrote an article on LinkedIn a few weeks ago where I talked about the culture of opportunity. So I wouldn't be where I'm at if people didn't take a chance and give me the ability to learn more, do more, take on more, right? So if we as an industry can do that, then you're going to be able to develop your internal candidates. You're also going to be able to hire external candidates by taking opportunity on people that don't have experience. I know that is a risky proposition for a lot of people in multifamily, but if you have a labor shortage and there are individuals out there that are willing to work, they just might not be in our industry. So if you look at training and development, if you invest in training and development a little bit more, and then you look at programs like the Beauregard Maintenance Academy, like internships, then you're going to be able to address that labor shortage. It might not be with a 5-year experienced multifamily tech that can just walk on the job site and start doing everything. At the end of the day, your option is nobody or somebody that you can train, teach, and develop. And I will always choose somebody that I can train, teach, and develop than leaving an empty head count, because the empty head count at the end of the day is going to burn out your current employees and your current staff. They're going to get tired. They're going to get overworked. And eventually they're going to either leave or just stop really being invested and stop caring. And then both of those scenarios are really bad.
Brian, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day today to be with us. Amazing conversation. I hope to continue this down the road, because we haven't even scratched the surface of all the questions that I wanted to ask. But
Yeah,
I do want to give you the opportunity to share any final thoughts that you might have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Adrian and Jolise. Thank you guys. I'm happy to come on anytime that you want to continue it, or part 2 maybe. Very, very happy and open and willing to do that. And I noticed you guys had some other podcasts potentially in the mix, leadership ones and different ones like that. So if you ever start those up, I'm also happy to do that as well. My final thought or my sort of lasting impression of it is really 3 things, right? It's, be willing to take risks on individuals. Some of your all-stars might be in your own team right now, and you're overlooking them because you're not willing or able to sort of invest the time in them and the training. So give them the opportunity, let them run, and you might be surprised at what they're able to produce. Number two, start hiring people that don't have experience. Come up and create these programs. Bring new people into our industry, because if we don't, I'm not looking at tomorrow in terms of labor shortage, and I don't think you are either, Adrian, and reading and listening to you. I think you're looking at 5-10 years down the road, which is exactly what I'm looking at, which is why I wanted to build this program. Is I'm not worried about the maintenance tech tomorrow. Sure, they're difficult to find, but we can still find them. I'm worried about 5-10 years down the road. How can we service our residents then if we don't get ahead of this problem now? And then the third takeaway, start training and teaching soft skills to maintenance professionals, whether that's leadership, whether that's customer service. I think that it's something that gets overlooked far too often in our industry. We promote people because of their skills in accounting or their skills in turning a wrench, but we do not give them the tools to succeed once they become leaders of people. I think you'll get people to stay. You'll retain employees more. You'll also retain residents more if you have leaders that actually know how to manage and know how to lead people. Because in 2024, I think gone are the days where you can bark orders at people and yell at them and get them to do things. I think leadership has become much more empathetic. You have to understand, you have to put yourself in people's shoes. You have to really approach it differently.
Brian, thank you very much again for being with us. I want to thank Joelis for co-hosting with me. It's always great to have you by my side. I want to thank all of you that took the time to watch us, to listen to us today, to this episode. We hope to get you back here soon. Last but not the least important here, I want to thank our sponsors, our partners for making this podcast available. Kairos Water and Appwork. Please check out their web pages. Hopefully you'll find services that your company or your property could use. Have a great day, friends, and we'll see you back here soon.